Hi and welcome to LawWiser. Today on World Autism Awareness Day, we have with us two very special guests, Gopika Kapoor and Mohit Kapoor, both of whom are parent advocates and also two seasoned professionals from very diverse fields and industries. Before we get into the conversation, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to both of them so that our audiences, know you guys better. Gopika is a neurodiversity consultant and an author. She has worked with the Autism Intervention Team at Ummeed's Child Development Center, where she did therapy, conducted trainings, and facilitated the WHO Caregiver Skills Training Program. She is the author of 5 books, and we will talk to her a bit about that towards the end. And more importantly, if you are an organization wanting to incorporate inclusive practices to employ autistic talent, then Gopika is a person who you should be connecting with. Hi, Gopika, and welcome to LawWiser.
Thank you so much, Lavanya. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks. And again, now a quick introduction to Mohit before we move on. So Mohit Kapoor is a lawyer, and he's been practicing since over 25 years now as a solicitor, Supreme Court of England and Wales, and as an advocate in India. As the founder of Universal Legal, a full-service law firm established in Mumbai, he advises individuals and institutions across a wide spectrum of industries on all the legal matters. Amongst other ordinary positions, Mohit currently serves on the Institutional Ethics Committee of Narayanan Healthcare, SRCC Children's Hospital, and Mumbai. Hi, Mohit. Welcome to LawWiser.
Hi, Lavanya. Thanks for having us.
So again, thank you so much for joining. I'm personally very excited about this conversation because this is a subject that I myself don't know about much. And I'm sure a lot of people watching don't. In fact, honestly, the little bit that I know is probably, from the television that we watch and movies that we see. And, maybe the recent show that I saw called The Good Doctor on Netflix, that was when I actually, read about autism a bit and try to understand, but I'm sure that my understanding is still very, very limited. So thank you for being here, and let's dive straight, into it. I'm going to start with you, Gopika. For the benefit of our audiences, like I said, who may not fully understand, could you explain to us what is neurodiversity and is autism a neurodiversity?
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you. That's a really good question. So if you look at the word neurodiversity and you break it up into 2 parts, neuro means to do with the brain. Diversity, as we know, is difference. So basically, neurodiversity is a concept which really celebrates and looks at differences in the brain. And there are 606 neurodiversities, amongst which is autism. So what it does is it looks at autism as a difference, not a disability.
Right.
Having said that, the fact is that just because it is a difference, it doesn't mean that people who are neurodivergent don't need support. People with autism just need support, just like I need support. I can't read without my glasses, right?
Right.
That is my support. So similarly, people who are neurodivergent, people who have autism, do need certain supports. And so really what it does is it looks at autism as being part of something which is different, not necessarily less or wrong or bad. Autism in itself is characterized by a couple of things. One is difficulties in social communication and social interaction. So if you have a person who is autistic, you might find that they may be able to talk about things which they are experts in, but may find it very difficult to talk about, to ask for a glass of water or to make social conversation. Autism, again, is a spectrum. What that means is that you could have people on any end of the spectrum. So it's like a rainbow. It could be on either end of the spectrum. So you could have somebody who would be extremely verbal with a very, very high IQ, someone who is an expert, like I said, in a particular field, who will also struggle socially and with social communication and social interaction, as would somebody who's on the other end, who would be not speaking, who might have other conditions coexisting along with autism, who may have a lot of sensory difficulties along with that, and who may not be speaking. So both would have those difficulties with social communication, social interaction. And also the other thing that characterizes autism is restricted interests and repetitive behaviors. What this means is that a person with autism will have interests which are very restricted. Now, how this plays out is, say we take the person who is maybe not speaking, who is not cognitively would be lower. This person their only interest in life may be to just, bang a pencil on a piece of, on a table. Okay. What happens then is, if that pencil is taken away, there is an extreme behavior, because this is the only thing that person has that is of interest to them. This is the only thing that they do. On the other hand, you have somebody who is, like I said, with a very high IQ, who may be an expert in, say, dinosaurs of a particular period. Okay, that person again has difficulties picking up social cues with social interaction. So if you meet somebody like that at a party, they will probably give you a 25-minute lecture on dinosaurs of this period without realizing that you're rolling your eyes and you want to move away from this situation and that you're bored. Right? Both people have autism. It's not that they don't, but it's just presenting itself differently.
Right.
So there is a very famous saying which says, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, which means really that there is no way to kind of, pinpoint that a particular characteristic with the condition.
Right. And just to add to that, I wanted to understand, when is it usually diagnosed? Like, I mean, when would you kind of start sensing that maybe this is it, and just, so that you can appropriately start giving that care, or, take those steps towards it?
So I have worked with babies as young as 16 months. Okay. These babies have come to us because they've just, they've presented as, being extremely hyporeactive, which means that they don't react as much to external stimuli. And I have not been babbling, have not been showing eye contact. And so I've worked with babies who have been 16 months. Having said that, in the case of, say, our son, I remember when he was 5 months old, he would not respond to his name. If you called out his name or if you made a cooing sound, he would not respond to it. Okay. Right. This might have been the first signs, but of course we didn't know any better at that time. But typically I would say that it is any time between a year and a half to 3 years is when people pick it up. This is because that's when kids start interacting socially a lot, and people then, when they compare them to, plus they start socializing with other kids. So when parents start comparing their kid to another kid, they find that, my kid is not probably doing as much as that kid. Maybe there's something which is different about this child. The important thing to stress here is that the earlier you intervene, the better it is for the child. And the reason for this is that by the age of 5 years, our brains, any human brain, grows up to 80%, which means that those first 5 years your brain is like a sponge. It's absorbing every kind of stimulus that is being presented to it. And when you intervene early and you start working with the child, you start reading to the child, you start playing with the child, and that child's brain receives that stimulus, they're able to go, to be able to really absorb it and to be able to progress. That doesn't mean that they will not progress later on in life. There are a lot of young people who have got diagnosed much later. Women especially get diagnosed sometimes in their 30s and 40s, because a lot of women mask. When I say mask, it means that they cover up their autistic features. Okay, and this is something a common common trend. So a lot of women have masked in the past. So when they're in a corporate space, when they're in a social space, they will try to cover up those autistic features and try to behave like the rest. At some point of time, they realize that they are different from the rest. What also happens is this creates a lot of anxiety. It really, really compromises their mental health. And so sometimes when they receive the diagnosis in their maybe 30s or 40s or even 50s, it's a great, great relief to them because they don't have to cover up anymore and they really know.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I'll move on to my next question, and I'm going to start with Mohit. In fact, actually, both of you can, of course, pitch in because this is, again, very close to your heart. And I just wanted to know from you if you could share some of the challenges that you have faced firsthand, as caregivers. And also, of course, some of the challenges and social stigmas that kids or people with autism face.
Okay. Okay. So I think I'll start with the social stigmas because that is what people focus on a lot more.
Right.
So when children are, when you have a child between the age of 3 and 5, and in our particular case, when you have a child who does not communicate with other kids or stands out in a crowd, for instance, in a birthday party or in a social setting, the first thing is everyone looks at that child and says, he's different. What's wrong with him? The first question is, what is wrong with him? They don't look at it in any other way. And you are trying to protect, you are trying to compensate for the situation, overcompensate at times, also trying to make explanations for why the child is the way he is. Whereas you should actually accept that this is something which is a condition, it is not a disease, and it is something that you need to constantly explain to people that this is what is wrong with him. And a large part of our journey was trying to explain to people around us that what is autism all about. Because 15 years ago, people had no idea or awareness of what it's all about as opposed to today. That is the first thing that, the first challenge that we had. And I found that the sooner we accepted our situation, the better it was for us to explain, as opposed to try and compensate or couch it in any other way, in that sense.
So just to add to what Mohit said, I think for me, yes, the social piece was extremely challenging because like he said, we live in a society which really expects perfection. And this is of kids as well. So when it comes to your kids, they have to top the class, they have to be very sporty, they have to do, everything right. And here you have this kid who's on his own trip, and is not conforming to the norm. He's part of a twin. Okay, he's one of a twin where the twin is doing all those things. And so people are looking at him and wondering, that his sister's like this. Why?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And,
in our case, there was another point of reference which was there. So when this
which was like very close,
was participating in everything, there was always a challenge.
And so that was part of the challenge. Then the next step was school, which was...
Schooling was a big challenge because, fitting into an environment when you have other 5-year-old kids was challenging. Explaining to the school management as to why we required a shadow teacher in school to assist him was another challenge.
And I think even just getting into a school.
Getting into school
was the biggest challenge.
We had to make, we chose to make a disclosure at the first interview at one particular school in Mumbai, which was supposed to be or considers itself as inclusive. And after we made that disclosure, they sort of changed their entire approach to the children. So I think that that is a huge challenge because while we say, and we talk about it later, is that when you say access to education for children with disability, it's really good on paper, it's good in theory, but in practice, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, I'm sure. Actually, that was going to be my next question. So it kind of leads into it. That's what I want to understand because that's the first step, right? Like at home, you can protect your child, but then they have to step out into the world. And the first thing is school and interaction and education. So and again, I don't know very much about this because I don't know how this works. I wanted to actually understand from you that, like you said, access to education. Why is it important to rethink our education systems, and how can we provide, autistic children with access to good quality of education, and also in a way that they need, and how can we provide better opportunities?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, well, the first thing, again, talking from our experience 15 years ago when we started, is there was no special education institution in Mumbai at that point of time that was catering
Right.
for children with autism, right? So we were fortunate that there was an institution that was set up. It catered to children with all disabilities. And we found at some point of time that our child was actually made for a hybrid mainstream institution.
Okay.
And when we moved to that institution, it was great because he was with neurodivergent and other neurotypical children as well. The challenge that we found was the board examination system that we have in India, right? So we have the National Open School certification for children, and they do give concessions, but are they enough? I think they're really lacking in many ways. There is a lot more to be done because while you're supposed to make allowances and you're supposed to make concessions for children who have challenges, what we are doing right now and what we are seeing right now is really not enough.
And I think honestly also, Lavanya, it's a question of what is it that you are teaching kids. Okay. It is, I think for this, it's more of a systemic issue. Okay, because there are facts and figures which are being thrown at them. There is no functional education. What these kids need is functional education. So I remember a case a few years ago where there was a young man who was 18 and he has autism and he was missing from home. This happens with, unfortunately, a lot of frequency because a lot of kids tend to wander. And it was this person had finished his 12th grade. And but at the same time, he did not know his parents' phone number. Okay, so what is it that we're trying to teach them? He did not know his phone number, he did not know his address, he did not know how to get home. These are functional skills which all people need to learn, whether they are autistic or not. Also skills like how to manage a bank account, how to be able to, time management, how to be able to have a conversation, how to make a phone call, how to write an email. These are skills which neurotypicals pick up along the way. When email started, we didn't know how to write emails. We just watched other people, we read other people's emails and we learned. Kids with autism find it difficult to imitate, and social imitation becomes one of the big challenges for them. And so what happens is that they don't know how to pick up these functional skills. So instead, what is being taught to them is these facts and figures, most of which unfortunately are completely outdated. And they just have to write reams and reams of paper and submit that to an exam just to pass and get a certificate. Does that mean that they are skilled and trained to do what they are supposed to do in the future? No, not necessarily. And so very often, a lot of them don't meet their potential. And also, there is huge unemployment. We don't know the exact statistics because there has not been a study which has been done.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah,
there has not been a study done in India, but I think in the UK there was a study which said that there was some, like 9 to 11% of people with autism are employed in all of the UK. Which has a large population and has a lot of initiatives for employment. 9 to 11% of that large population are employed. I don't even want to know what the figures are in India. But this is so the education system then kind of moves into the employment, and then what very often happens is that a lot of individuals who are skilled, who have the potential, end up doing things like making candles and things like that. Not to take away from that, but a lot of them have the potential to do more. And I think it stems from the education system.
So Gopika, tell me, what are the alternatives available to parents? What as a as a parent, what can one do? I mean, I don't even know, in fact, in Delhi, if there are any hybrid schools. Honestly, I never. Never
So
really
Lavanya,
come across.
that the answer is simple, that there are not that many alternatives. There are organizations, a lot of them parent-led, who have created their own schools, affiliated them to state boards. But unfortunately, the systems of education, in terms of, if say you want to get your kid to pass their 10th, simple.
Yeah.
So you either have your state board. In Mumbai, it's the SSC board. You have ICSC, which is the national, or a CBSC, or you have NIOS, okay, which is the open schooling system.
Open school, yeah.
The only advantage of NIOS is that it is spread out across many, across time. So you can give 2 papers, then you give 1 paper, then you can give 2 papers. There are 5 papers to be given. Okay. There are a lot of subjects which are taught, like, for example, painting, bakery, carpentry, things like that. Now, on paper, it sounds fantastic. I mean, if my kid could learn painting, bakery, carpentry, of course I'd want to do it, right? Because these are skills which I think will help him. Right. However, the sad part is that a majority of these subjects are theory. So you will have to learn the history of some painting and who painted Mona Lisa, and what is, like a particular kind of painting, what is impressionism and things like that. For a child who is on the spectrum or has any other kind of condition, how is this going to have any relevance in their life? Right?
Right.
I think to add to that, it seems the curriculum which was conceptualized in the late 80s, when you look at what is being taught in many of these boards, is that it has really not been expanded, developed, updated for the last 25 to 30 years. And that really is where the challenge is. Of course, the practical vocational training, which is really what is needed, is certainly missing from the primary education system at the moment.
Right. Thank you. Thanks. That was really helpful. I'm going to actually, I want to add that, I mean, even like when I was in school, we felt that the education, that we're getting is really flawed, and it is missing in so many things. So I cannot even imagine.
So it's a very deep systemic issue. I mean,
So this is a conversation for maybe another panel altogether. But I'm going to try to stick to the subject for today. If so, many organizations, I want to talk about D&I because it's, a topic, I don't want to say trending, but yes and no. Like, a lot of people like to talk about it or want to or feel they should be, as an organization as well. So many organizations are actively talking about diversity and inclusion, policies and initiatives. Some of them are actually implementing it. But given that we're on this subject, I want to understand from you, Gopika, if you can add to this, that how much of that conversation do you feel is addressing people with disabilities, and specifically if you talk about neuro-disabilities?
Thank you. That is actually a good question. So you're absolutely right. It is the buzzword. It is trending. Everyone's talking about DEI. And it is something which all companies want to kind of carry forward. Now, again, when we talk about DEI categories, we have women, we have LGBTQI++, and we have disabilities, broadly speaking. So when we're talking about these things, I go and I talk to a lot of corporates, I do a lot of presentations, a lot of sensitization sessions, and that is great. I think the very fact that people are even thinking about this as compared to what they were, like, I think even 2 years ago, this wasn't something which was being discussed. I think we're making great headway. However, what I do want to say is that it can't stop over here. Okay. So when I say I go and I talk to a corporate and I make a presentation and tell them this is what neurodiversity is, this is what people who are neurodivergent can add to your organization, there have to be second steps. There have to be steps taken after that. It can't just be left at this, okay, here's this person who came and did this presentation and now we know about it. I think just taking that first step is also great, but I think it's great to follow up on that. The fact is that people who are neurodivergent can add huge amounts to a workspace, to a corporate. So the forerunners in this have been companies like JP Morgan Chase, Ernst & Young, SAP. They've all really created programs, even IBM, Microsoft, Google. And I have to say within India, Lemon Tree Hotels has been amazing. 20% of their workforce are people with disabilities. And they've done some phenomenal work in this area. I remember attending this presentation where State Bank of India had people who were autistic in their workforce. And I was so pleasantly surprised. I was really amazed by that. So there are a lot of pluses, to hiring people who are neurodivergent. And it's not just because, it's a CSR initiative or it's a DEI initiative or something which makes the company feel good. It actually makes financial sense. To start with, there is over 90% retention of employees who are neurodivergent. And when you look at the amount it costs a company when there is a turnover of staff, which there is a huge amount, right? I mean, compared to neurodivergent employees, if you look at neurotypical employees, I think the turnover must be about 30 to 40%. And that costs the company every year. It costs thousands and thousands of rupees, when there is this kind of change in staff. As compared to that, when you look at employees who are neurodivergent, there is an over 90% rate of retention. Not only that, because when we said, remember we talked about initially neurodivergent, which means that their brains think differently. So these brains provide solutions to problems which neurotypical people may not have even thought about. And so that has also, there have been a lot of case studies which have shown that it's saved companies not only in terms of money, but it's also saved them time. So they've estimated a project will take 5 weeks, it's got done in 3 days. Just because somebody on the team was neurodivergent and said, okay, let's do it like this. The company has supported them and said, okay, we will go with that. And it saved them huge amounts of time and money. So there is an investment of on the company's part initially of learning about the condition, learning about the employee, creating those systems and accommodations so that this employee succeeds and thrives. But in the long run, they found it has created tremendous benefits. And also, if I may add, I think from the concept of company culture, just like I know that having one neurodivergent child in a classroom changes the culture of the classroom. It makes the kids more empathetic, makes them more compassionate. It does the same thing to a workforce. And I think that is something which is really needed.
Absolutely. So actually, I'm going to go back to this. I want to ask you, let's say I'm an organization who wants to hire autistic talent. For example, where do I go? Like, just for everyone's benefit, is there any forum to reach out to? And then secondly, you've touched upon this, and it was actually going to be my next question. It's not just I can hire somebody, but then how do I build that as an organization? What steps do I need to take? If you can maybe simply explain, just to get a sense that, because you have to build that ecosystem, that's how that person is going to be integrated, do well, and contribute to the organization. What is it that needs to be done? And where do we start?
Right, absolutely. I'm really glad you asked that. So I think the first step you start with is commitment. Okay, you start with a commitment that I am going to, as an organization, hire neurodivergent employees. And that is that, because if you have that commitment, that is literally your first step.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are a number of organizations across the country, Vishesh, Enable India, Youth for Jobs, all across the country, Action for Autism in Delhi.
Okay, okay.
And what they do is they train people who are on the spectrum for employability. Okay.
Okay.
So what they do is they teach them those employment skills. They teach them all the soft skills, which may, again, like I had earlier said, it may come naturally to people who are neurotypical, because we learn by imitation, but which people who are on the spectrum will not learn. So they train them in those skills, and then they kind of match the job requirement with these individuals. Now what? Now they go into the corporate field. So that is where the company that I work with comes in. So I consult with a company called Rangam. And what Rangam does is it trains the corporate side. Okay.
So, okay, got it.
What we do is we work with the corporate side, and there are a number of companies like that, working with the corporate end to say, okay, you're getting this person in, starting from the way that you're going to write your job advertisement, to the way that you're going to conduct your interviews, the way that you are going to get this person on board, as well as providing ongoing mentoring to make sure that this person is not just thrown into the deep end. I mean, they've come into the organization.
Exactly.
How are you going to make sure that they work properly over here? So to create a process whereby the person who comes in, the neurodivergent employee who comes in, has the ability to succeed within the organization. So whether it is weekly check-ins, whether it is taking that person's mental health into account, whether it is sensitizing the rest of the staff, providing buddies or mentors, creating systems and processes which help this person to function and work better, is what we do at Rangam. So that is from the corporate end. And so really but like I said, it starts with the commitment to say that, yes, it is not going to be the same path as hiring somebody who's neurotypical, but we're committing to doing this, and we're willing to stick with the process.
Right. Thank you so much. That was really interesting and helpful as well. Mohit, I'm going to ask you, maybe sort of related, like, as a business owner or as entrepreneurs, like, often you're just so busy with work and the mainstream stuff, and then COVID comes in, staying afloat. There's so many challenges, and amidst all of that, to commit to something like Gopika is saying, it starts with commitment. That's one. But maybe there are a lot of preconceived notions, or there's just lack of awareness. So people have these concerns, like, they may feel that what would the final outcome of work be? Would it be impacted? The quality of work? How do you manage those crazy deadlines? How do you manage kind of client expectations? Then again, like, how do you sensitize co-workers? So there's just so much happening. It's such a competitive world. So I just want to ask you that, as a business owner and entrepreneur yourself, what would you have to say? Can you comment on that?
Sure. So I think the first thing is that the perception of autism is that it's a disability. It's actually a difference, right? And the way I look at it as a difference, because we've lived through it, a difference that can actually be used as a tremendous advantage to the workforce. So half the battle is trying to figure out how you can leverage this within your workforce. And as Gopika said, sensitizing entrepreneurs, business owners, that these people or these people with these conditions can bring to the workforce a lot of advantages in terms of focus, dedication, giving you out-of-the-box solutions to things, maintaining empathy within your organization, things like that. Now, as a business owner, medium-sized, mid-sized business owner, would you really be wanting to invest in this? Maybe, maybe not. The fact is, if you don't know what it can do for you, you will not know the advantages, and therefore, I think the first challenge is understanding what they can bring to the table.
And I just, from the legal aspect, just wanted to understand, there are certain acts like in India, there are certain acts like the Rights of persons with disabilities, 2016, and there's policies like the National Policy for Persons with Disabilities, which was, I think, 2006. If you can, maybe tell us a bit about this, and how do these acts and policies, how do they intend to, or are they supporting autistic people, and are there any incentives, like, just to get an understanding of how this is functioning?
Sure. So the 2016 Act actually is really comprehensive. It covers a number of different disabilities and conditions, including autism spectrum disorder.
Right.
Now, typically, when you look at an act in theory, in sort of theory, it provides for reservations, it provides for protections and things like that. There is a framework in place.
Okay.
To add to that, there are a couple of other things that the government has done. So, for instance, there is a unique identification card that has been issued to people with disability, which they can use to avail of government concessions, government services, and things like that. There's also the National Trust, which comes under, I believe, the Ministry of Social Justice and Welfare. So, for instance, a person with autism or Down syndrome or any other, in that sense, condition, would at the age of 18, or rather should at the age of 18, have a legal guardian be appointed for them. It could be a family member, and that legal guardian would then take over, and there would be a legal sanctity to their property. There would be a protection. So the legal guardian essentially would be a trustee who would protect that person, their property, their business, and various things around that. So there are safeguards that have been given under the law. I think the policy is fantastic. It's evolving every day. Reservation in jobs in the private sector is something which is there in paper. I don't think it's been implemented in practice, but I don't think that should be done either, because it should be up to corporates to actually hire people with differences for their benefit, rather than being told that you have to do it because it's part of reservation.
Yeah. I actually didn't even know that there is a reservation. I mean, I know for women, for example, I think you need to have one woman on your board. But that's, I think, where my knowledge, and then of course that's also debatable. Yes, you're right. I mean, diverse talent should be hired because they add value, not because it is mandated. But I guess there's just one way to kind of urge people to think in that direction. So,
absolutely. Unfortunately, that's the way it works.
I mean,
but I don't think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I agree. It's been really an amazing conversation. I just have a couple of more things to ask you before we go. Gopika, your most recently, I know you've written several books, but your most recently authored book, Beyond the Blue. Could you tell me, could you tell us a little bit about the book? What really you've shared in that?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So actually, the book was born out of the fact that when our son Veer was younger, I would read everything that I could lay my hands on about autism. I would read all sorts of blogs and, order all kinds of books. And there was not a single Indian book that I came across. There was no book written by even an Indian parent, so everything that I read was from a Western perspective. So it talked about, how insurance covered certain treatment. It talked about Thanksgiving and Halloween, and how some kids were scared of Halloween. It talked about, traditions and customs and cultures that were very different from the one that Veer was growing up in. Right. And at the same time, the experiences that we were going through were very Indian experiences, or experiences that you typically would find on the Indian subcontinent. So being a writer, it was something which people would keep telling me, you should write a book on autism, especially once I started working as a therapist. They would say, you should write a book on autism. And it was always at the back of my mind that I should write this book. And then I realized that I'm in a very unique position, because I am not only a parent, but I also had, by then I had also had almost 10 years of professional experience behind me. So I knew how to work with kids. And so that, in essence, is how Beyond the Blue was born. So blue is the color that is associated with autism. It is a color that's associated with the World Autism Awareness Month. And or at least it was. Now the symbol of neurodiversity has changed, but anyway. So I really felt that, the reason I named it Beyond the Blue was a number of reasons. One is that when a child is diagnosed, and that happened for me as well, that all I could see when I looked at Veer, all I could see was autism. That is the only thing I thought about. I would look at him, I would only think of the autism. And over time, I realized that he was so much more. Okay, right. Yes, he does have autism, and that makes him who he is. And it makes him the son that he is, whom I love very much, because of the autism as well, right? He has his own unique brand of humor. He's got his own personality. And of course, that is because he's autistic, right? But he's a child, or now a young man. Sorry, I can't call him a child anymore. He's a young man, and he does things, he is things, which is not only his autism. So that was one thing. The other thing is that when society looks at individuals who are neurodivergent, they only see that divergent part. Okay, there's a difference. They're disabled. They can't do as much. They're special. All these kind of things. But where are you seeing the potential? Because there is tremendous potential in each and every one of them. They will be able to do whatever they can do, but there is potential.
Right.
And so the idea was to really get parents to feel that this is something that we are dealing with, but it doesn't mean that we cannot have a happy life. It doesn't mean that we cannot live and live well. And so those were all the reasons why I wrote it. So it is from a very Indian perspective. And it is from the perspective of a parent as well as a professional. And so what I do is I share my story, my journey with Veer, or rather our family's journey with Veer. And also give strategies, tips, and sometimes just very common sense, practical advice, which I have experienced.
Yes, it's actually that was I was going to end with that. Just simple things that we may not understand if we've never really interacted so much with neurodivergent people. What are some of the things, if Mohit and both of you can add to this, that we can do to maybe increase awareness, sensitize ourselves, or even increase awareness of people? Like, I've had this interaction today and I've learned so much. What are some other things that I can do? What do I talk to people about? Just so that people, obviously, because that's the first step, like awareness. When you know, then only you can do something, or you can be sensitized, and then you can have that empathy, or you can at least contribute in some small way. So, what is it that we can do?
Yeah, so I think neurodivergence is all around us. If you look around you, your family, your friends, you will find neurodivergent people around you as well. It's just that you haven't really looked at them in that way. You always found people different. You found people peculiar. Make an effort to understand them, is what I would say. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I say make an effort to understand them. If you understand them, and because they're in your immediate circle, you understand them, you'll understand the differences that exist in people.
Yeah, I think we're living in a world that is not very inclusive. We're getting increasingly polarized, and I think just making space for all kinds of differences, and just allowing people to be who they are, accepting. I think it starts from acceptance. Of any kind of difference. It really makes a huge difference. And I would say reaching out. Just because somebody is different doesn't mean that you cannot reach out to them, that you cannot speak with them. So
Right.
what if they speak differently or think differently? That does not mean that they will not add value to your life. We've increasingly become a world which kind of has this thing that I will only be friends if you are like me, or I will talk to you if you are like me. But a lot of value can be added to your life from talking to people who are not like you. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that is something which we need to remember.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to remember what you said. I really love what you said about making space for all kinds of differences. I think that's just, and yes, we have become, I think, just impatient, intolerant, and just busy with our lives and very quick to judge. I'm talking about myself at least. Maybe obviously it's not a general comment, but I feel definitely each one of us can do better. So thank you so much for joining us on LawWiser today. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you guys did as well. And I also hope that many people watch this and learn some of the things that I did today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.